So it's just hours ago that Azovstal in Mariupol capitulated. That's that Soviet-era steel plant in southeast Ukraine near the Sea of Azov, a very enclosed sea which opens onto the Black Sea. So it's a steel works, Azov as in Sea of Azov, and Stal meaning steel, and it had very extensive underground tunnels. And this labyrinth helped Ukrainian defenders resist almost 10 weeks of siege. So I take my hat off to them. So the world was standing and staring in awe and amazement at these few valiant men and women who held out against overwhelming odds. So the Ukrainians, I think, said 265 surrendered. The Russians said it's something like 965. Now the Russians are probably inflating the figure. The Ukrainians might be underreporting the figure. I suspect the Russians are lying more because the Russian government certainly does lie massively every single day, shamelessly, tell a lie that's not even related to the truth, or say hello to Farah. Because it's obviously been deeply humiliating for Russia, which is meant to be a superpower, that it was held up for 10 weeks by a paltry number of defenders. Um, on the other hand, I don't think Ukrainians will actually underreport the number that much because they hope this is some sort of prisoner swap. Have they got it on paper? Even if it is, I'm sure obviously Russia will renege on its promises. The Kremlin will break its solemn promises time and time again, has absolutely no honor, is a total blackguard. Because if the Ukrainians give 265 prisoners, they would like to get those 265 back in return, doing an exchange, a prisoner swap via Belarus or something like that to Poland, nominally neutral countries. Countries are not actually combatants. So the defenders of Azovstal, they'd held up the Russian behemoth for weeks. So on the 21st of April, Putin proclaimed that his troops had seized the city of Mariupol, but they'd reduced it to rubble. And so if they're incorporated this into Russia, that makes it very, very expensive for them to rebuild the city. And this is something that Russia can ill afford. It's doubled its military spending to $300 million a day. It's spending twice as much on the military as it is on healthcare, and its costs are rising because they've expended almost all their guided missiles. That's several years worth of production. They're going to be very expensive to produce those. They've had so many tanks, armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles, trucks, artillery pieces, and so on destroyed, and it's very pricey to replace those. And the sanctions are going to contract their economy something like 20% this year. It's going to be much harder to afford spending all this military spending. They're going to be austerity in other areas, so cutting public sector salaries, simply not paying them for months at a time. So Putin is bringing the country back to the early 1980s, a gerontocracy with a sclerotic economy, increasingly isolated. And that was very sagacious Russian colonel who went on Russian television the other day saying almost the entire world is against us. And that's true. Even China's not particularly helpful. There's no such thing as a free luncheon with the Chinese. They will drive a very hard bargain for any help they give. North Korea, they're actually not doing anything for Russia. They've got to worry about coronavirus. And do the Russians want North Korean troops to come and fight for them, spreading coronavirus, when Russia's Sputnik vaccine is not terribly effective? There was a meeting of the Collective Security Treaty Organization in Russia the other day. That's Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, as well as Russia. Those 6 countries, none of whom are fighting on Russia's side. And it is true that Belarus allowed Russia to invade Ukraine via Belarus. So Putin likes to show that he's not entirely alone in the world. But Belarus, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Eritrea, Syria, the countries actually voted for Russia. They're not actually lifting a finger. They've not sent a single troop. They're not saying send a single bullet, a single dollar, anything. So this has been a monumental miscalculation by Putin, and I'm sure there's unease and disquiet in the inner circles and amongst the plutocracy. So the billionaires have lost an awful lot of money, and it's all his fault by this harebrained scheme. Fight going on for 12 weeks. He thought it would last more like 12 days. Even on the third day, they put out a press statement, the Russian government, and this communique said, that's it, we've won, we've triumphed, we're now uniting Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. Well, they quickly retracted that one. They're having to eat a very large portion of humble pie. So the dogged resistance of the Azovstal defenders was an inspiration to the world, some of whom were members of the Azov regiment, which people say is far right. I don't know what its ideology is. However distasteful its ideology might be, they are Ukrainians defending the Ukraine, which they're absolutely entitled to do. And even if Russia's ideology was totally benign, they have no right whatsoever to invade Ukraine. Ukraine is a sovereign nation recognized by Russia, recognized by every single other country in the world, and Russia signed the Budapest Memorandum, and Ukrainians have the absolute right to defend their territory to the last breath, and Russia has no right at all to put a toe across the border to fire a shot against Ukraine, and Russia has been launching this illegal war of aggression against Ukraine for over 8 years. Anyway, so now the Speaker of the Russian Parliament, Vyacheslav Volodin, accused them of being Nazis and war criminals, the gallant defenders of Azovstal, and said that they should be executed. Now, Russia has been expelled from the Council of Europe, which is not the European Union. The Council of Europe was founded in 1950 and includes every country in Europe from Iceland to Turkey, with the single exception of Belarus. But now Russia's been expelled. In order to be the Council of Europe, you have to abolish the death penalty. Former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, said this is a golden opportunity to reintroduce capital punishment, which they may yet do. And Belarus is just extending the list of offences for which people can be put to death. But anyway, it is good news for Russia that they've taken Azovstal, because that's the last rock in the road for them, blocking their land corridor from Russia all the way to Kherson. But I thought the Ukrainians might counterattack and actually seize a strip of land down to the coast to actually block that and make transport more difficult. I cannot for the life of me figure out why the Ukrainians have not destroyed that bridge across the Kerch Strait from Russia to Crimea. I mean, do they not have suitable missiles? You think that'd be a very high priority in NATO countries to provide such a missiles could destroy that bridge? Then they have to ship things across to Crimea, and obviously we know the Ukrainians have got anti-ship missiles, very effective, sunk the Moskva as well as several smaller vessels, and then the logistics nightmare would become even worse for the Russians. They could fly things in by transport planes, but those wouldn't be that difficult to shoot down. Now, you're not going to be able to shoot down every transport plane, you're not going to be able to sink every ship, but you destroy some of them, which would obviously destroy the supplies, and it would deplete Russia's number of planes and ships. I mean, Russia might be shipping its own goods out via the Black Sea, and eventually the Ukrainians might switch strategy and not just target warships, destroy merchant ships, and so Russian goods be sent to the bottom, damaging the Russian economy even more. No, the Russians have managed to take Snake Island and hold Snake Island, a tiny island, but is a base which gives them greater control over the eastern part of the Black Sea, sorry, western part of the Black Sea. But it's been attacked by Ukrainian missiles quite a lot. So a lot of Russian assets have been destroyed there. Is it even worth it holding the island? So it tied an awful lot of manpower. Quite a lot of Russians were killed and wounded trying to take that. So it's conservatively estimated that 20,000 Russians have been killed in this war so far, further 60,000 wounded. So they're really finding it difficult to fill their depleted ranks. The Rosgvardia have been sent in, who really like another type of police to actually fight, and scouring military districts. These open source sources have shown that from Moscow, so overwhelmingly from the backwoods, they're conscripting country boys because Muscovites are wealthier, are better educated, are more connected, and it would impact the capital. And the capital is a bit of a hotbed of opposition to the government. So the government doesn't want to make that even worse. And so if you're working class, if you're uneducated, if you don't have connections, you're the one who's going to be sent off as cannon fodder. So it's a grossly inegalitarian as usual. And there are rumors that Putin is very ill, is maybe dying, and that he's a micromanager, he's interfering in tactical level things. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Obviously, his commanders have let him down very badly indeed. I'm a bit surprised he's not sacked Sergei Shoigu or Valery Gerasimov, but maybe that would be really bad PR. He might eventually have to do it because he's blaming them, because he doesn't want to take the blame himself. He's going to have to pass the blame down the chain of command, and he'll never carry the can for his screw ups because he's an absolute coward. It's like John F. Kennedy says, defeat is an orphan, but victory has 1,000 fathers. You've got to hand it to Kennedy, and the Bay of Pigs failed when they released those prisoners. When they came back from he fessed up. Yeah, I screwed up. He had that moral courage, whereas Putin has no courage at all. It's an absolutely low down, shameful, despicable caitiff. Even if you agree with his policies, he will never fess up. He'll never man up. He'll never carry the can for his screw up. He will always try and inculpate an innocent party. But he must be livid with Gerasimov and Shoigu. You told me this was going to work. It was penciled in for the 16th of February. You said you weren't ready. You begged for more time. I gave you 8 more days. We went ahead. You were still ill prepared. It was a massive screw up. And we've not achieved our goals. We have not decapitated the state. There'll be no regime change. Zelensky's more popular than others. We've only taken a small slice of territory. We've sustained very high casualties. The diplomatic pushback has been much more severe than Putin anticipated. Maybe Lavrov warned him, I don't know. But is Lavrov trying to screw up? He's 75. He's been begging to retire for years, the foreign minister, and never ever been allowed. I wonder if he's trying to do it badly, precisely so it can be put out to grass. Um, anyway, but things might go better for Russia. I've been saying this for some weeks. I'm surprised just how bad it's been for them, how slow they've been. But these new troops are not adequately trained. There'll be new conscripts, wet behind the ears, who don't really know what they're doing, sent to the battlefront, who are going to screw up even more, because it takes a long time to be trained properly to get through basic training, let alone know how to handle sophisticated weaponry. So thank you, Lucas. So the Ukrainian military is expanding. They hope to have 1 million troops, because bear in mind, population of Ukraine was about 45 million. At least 5 million under Russian control, at least 6 million have fled. So that leaves something like 36 million, some of whom are too old, too young, whatever. So military age people might be about 20 million. Some of whom are women who obviously can fight. Some people are vital in other sectors of the economy, running the railways, running farms or whatever. But to recruit 1 million full-time troops is actually very doable. So Ukraine needs at least 5 billion euros a month to sustain things, to pay their soldiers and civil servants and whatever. But the European Union can easily stump that up. So anyway, it's cataclysmic for Russia, and they've really burnt their bridges. To restore relations to how good they were even in February, which was not particularly good, that's going to take a very long time. Even if they pulled out of Ukraine unconditionally today, it would take at least several years to get back to that. But I think it's going to be more like several decades. They really are in the deep freeze. Russia, is not going to have Europe over a barrel again, energy dependent. Russia, EU countries going to be buying less and less energy from Russia. And they might never stop buying it entirely, but they don't want to be held hostage, as Russia was trying to do blatantly for a few months. Um, so they've lost those markets. Okay, they think they can sell more to India and China. But can they say no if called up? No, if called to military service, that's compulsory, because everybody would say no then. They don't have the infrastructure to sell much more oil and gas to Russia, to India and China right now. You need to build more pipelines. You need to get more oil tankers. You can get those, but it takes several years. And I know those economies are growing in population and in wealth. So therefore, we'll have a growing thirst for energy. On the other hand, renewables becoming cheaper and more viable. And the EU is going to put a massive effort into that. It's going to lift the planning restrictions, and other countries may follow suit. So, just think, within 50 years, maybe nobody in the world will buy oil, gas, and coal at all. And Russia could have spent hundreds of billions of dollars preparing for that, but it hasn't. It's squandered this on this completely avoidable war in Ukraine. Morality aside, it just wasn't particularly in Russia's interest. Okay, you get a little bit more oil and gas, you get a bit more farmland, okay, but you didn't desperately need that. It'd be a lot cheaper to buy resources and not conquer them. It was just Putin's megalomania. So it's an awful pity, and good people are dying on both sides. So I really hope Ukraine wins. I'm not remotely anti-Russian, and Ukraine's be liberating Russia too, if it led to a free government in Russia. Thank you for watching. Bye.